30-year mortgage rates are sitting at 6.11% this week. For first-time buyers who've been waiting on the sidelines, that number carries a lot of weight. I'm breaking down the numbers, the markets, and the strategies that could make 2026 the year you finally get keys in hand. This is Money Moves Daily. Here's what's changed. 40% of builders are cutting prices. Home sales are projected to jump 14%, and the balance of power is finally shifting toward buyers. But before you get too excited, this isn't a buyer's paradise. Prices remain elevated in most markets, and spring competition will be fierce. The opportunity is real. But it's nuanced. So let's talk about where the deals actually are, what concessions you can negotiate, and how to know if this market works for your specific situation. First, let's rewind. First-time buyers have faced one of the most brutal markets in modern history since 2020. Pandemic buying frenzy sent prices soaring in almost every metro area. Then came the rate spike. In 2022, mortgage rates more than doubled, jumping from around 3% to over 7% in under a year. That double punch, high prices plus high rates, priced out an entire generation of would-be homeowners. Many simply stopped looking. They stayed in rentals and waited. But here's where 2026 is different. The market is finally rebalancing. Inventory is increasing, builder behavior is changing, and rates have stabilized below their recent peaks. According to the mortgage reports, 30-year fixed rates are currently at 6.11%, and projections suggest they'll hover around 6% through the rest of the year. By year-end, some forecasters expect rates to edge down to around 5.9%. That's not the 3% of 2021, but it's manageable for many buyers. Here's a big one. According to HousingWire, 40% of builders cut prices at the end of 2025, with average reductions around 5%. And it's not just price cuts. 2/3 of builders are offering incentives like mortgage rate buydowns, covering closing costs, or including upgraded finishes. Rate buydowns are particularly valuable right now. A builder might pay to reduce your rate for the first few years, lowering your monthly payment during the most expensive period of home ownership. The National Association of Realtors projects home sales will increase 14% nationwide in 2026. That signals renewed buyer activity after years of suppressed demand. Meanwhile, home price growth is projected at just 2 to 3%, roughly matching overall inflation. That's a significant cooldown from the double-digit gains of recent years. This combination's stable rates, price cuts from builders, and slower appreciation creates a fundamentally different calculus than buyers faced in 2023 or 2024. According to housing analysts quoted by HousingWire, quote, "In 2026, the balance is expected to shift further toward buyers, as more homes are expected to come on the market than home shoppers." But let's be clear about what shifting toward buyers actually means. It doesn't mean prices are collapsing. It doesn't mean you'll get your dream home for a steal. What it means is negotiating power, room to ask for concessions, time to make decisions without the panic of bidding wars. That's valuable even if prices don't drop dramatically. Here's a notable data point. First-time buyers are now putting down an average of 10%, the highest down payment percentage in nearly 40 years, according to NAR. That higher down payment reflects both the challenges of this market. Buyers need more skin in the game, and the discipline of those who've been saving while waiting for conditions to improve. Now let's talk geography. NAR's analysis of best markets for first-time buyers in 2026 reveals some surprises. Charleston, West Virginia topped the list for starter homes. Following Charleston were Peoria, Illinois, and Binghamton, New York. These aren't glamorous metros, but they offer genuine affordability with median prices well under $200,000. These unicorn markets, places where starter homes still exist below $200,000, require either living there already or being willing to relocate. For remote workers, that's increasingly realistic. But most buyers will stay in competitive coastal or Sunbelt metros. In those markets, the strategy shifts from finding cheap homes to negotiating concessions on reasonably priced ones. Economists suggest that buyers in 2026 shouldn't write off homes slightly above their budget. Quote, there's a good chance they'll get some sort of concession from the seller. Here's the practical framework. If you're serious about buying in 2026, timing matters. January and February, the low-volume months historically offer the most seller flexibility. By spring, inventory increases, but so does competition. If you find the right property in the slower months, you may have more room to negotiate on price and terms. Step 1. Get pre-approved now. Not pre-qualified, pre-approved. That means a lender has actually verified your income, assets, and credit. It shows sellers you're serious and ready to close. Step 2. Target new construction where concessions are most available. Builders have inventory to move. They're motivated to negotiate in ways that individual sellers often aren't. When negotiating with builders, ask specifically about rate buydowns, closing cost credits, and included upgrades. These can be worth tens of thousands of dollars over the life of your mortgage. Step 3. Budget for that 10% down payment as the new baseline. I know that's a significant number, but it strengthens your offer and often gets you better loan terms. That said, lower down payment options still exist. FHA loans allow 3.5% down. Some conventional programs go as low as 3% for qualified buyers. The trade-off is mortgage insurance, which adds to your monthly payment. Run the numbers both ways: higher down payment with no insurance versus lower down payment with it, to see what works for your cash flow. S&P Global's 2026 Housing Outlook projects robust mortgage origination growth despite what they call stagnant home prices in many markets. That combination, more loan activity but flat prices, actually favors buyers. It suggests the market is moving again without the price escalation that made previous years so difficult. Let's put affordability in perspective. According to several economists, housing affordability today remains challenging by historical standards. Some say the worst since the 1980s. But here's the counter-argument that real estate economists make: waiting for dramatically better conditions may be a losing strategy. Any drop in rates will bring sidelined buyers flooding back. When rates dropped briefly in late 2023, buyer activity spiked almost immediately. The competition that results from lower rates often erases the savings those rates would provide. The strategic insight here: buying when others are hesitant gives you negotiating room. If rates drop meaningfully later, you can always refinance, but you can't go back and negotiate a better purchase price. Here's a framework I find useful. Calculate your rent versus buy break-even. At what point does owning become cheaper than renting, factoring in all costs: mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance? In many markets, if you're planning to stay at least 5 to 7 years, buying tends to make financial sense even at today's rates. Shorter timelines make the math more difficult. One more consideration: the rent versus buy calculation varies dramatically by market. In some expensive metros, renting may remain cheaper. In affordable areas, buying wins quickly. According to multiple forecasts, the spring 2026 market will see more inventory than recent years. More listings mean more choices and less pressure to make rushed decisions. Use that time wisely. Visit multiple properties. Don't fall in love with the first house you see. This market rewards patience and comparison shopping, luxuries buyers haven't had recently. When you do find a property you like, don't skip the inspection. In the frenzy of 2021 and 2022, many buyers waived inspections to win bids. That's rarely necessary now. A thorough inspection protects you from expensive surprises. Roof issues, foundation problems, outdated electrical, these can cost tens of thousands to fix. Know what you're buying. If the inspection reveals issues, that's negotiation leverage. You can ask the seller to fix problems, reduce the price, or provide credits at closing. This is exactly the kind of power buyers lacked for years. Speaking of closing costs, they typically run 2 to 5% of the home's purchase price. On a $400,000 home, that's $8,000 to $20,000 beyond your down payment. In this market, ask sellers to contribute to closing costs. It's a common request, and many are willing to help, especially if their home has been listed for a while. If you find these breakdowns useful, subscribe to Money Moves Daily. We put out episodes like this every week, covering the numbers that actually affect your wallet. Now, a reality check. Not everyone should buy in 2026. If your job situation is unstable, your debt is high, or you're not sure where you want to live, renting remains the smarter choice. Homeownership comes with costs beyond the mortgage: repairs, property taxes, insurance, potential assessments. Budget for the unexpected, not just the monthly payment you see on paper. A good rule of thumb: have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved beyond your down payment and closing costs. That cushion protects you from becoming house poor. Final consideration: location within markets matters as much as which market you choose. Neighborhoods within the same metro can have wildly different trajectories for appreciation and livability. Research school districts, commute patterns, planned developments, and crime statistics. A cheaper home in a declining area isn't a bargain, it's a liability that will be hard to sell later. Conversely, an up-and-coming neighborhood with new businesses, infrastructure investment, and improving demographics can turn a modest home purchase into meaningful equity over time. Talk to locals if you can. The best information about a neighborhood's trajectory doesn't show up in data, it comes from people who live and work there every day. Let me bring it back to the numbers. At current rates around 6%, a $400,000 home with 10% down means roughly $2,300 per month in principal and interest alone. Add property taxes, insurance, and maybe HOA fees, and you're likely looking at $2,700 to $3,200 monthly. That's real money. Make sure your budget can handle it comfortably. Financial advisors often suggest keeping total housing costs below 28 to 30% of gross income. That's easier said than done in expensive markets, but it's a useful guardrail. Before you make an offer, stress test your budget. What if rates rise and you can't refinance? What if one income in your household disappears? Can you still make the payment? I'm not trying to scare anyone away from buying. I'm trying to make sure you go in with eyes open. The buyers who succeed in this market will be prepared, patient, and strategic. Here's the bottom line: 2026 offers first-time buyers the best conditions they've seen in years. Stable rates, builder concessions, increasing inventory, negotiating power returning. That doesn't mean buying is right for everyone or that prices will drop dramatically. But for prepared buyers who've been patient, the math is finally starting to work. Get pre-approved, know your numbers, target the right neighborhoods and property types, and negotiate like you have options, because in 2026 you actually do. This content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor before making investment decisions. I'm Money Moves Daily. See you next time.